Despite Britain's best efforts to keep the peace, on September 1st, 1939, Adolf Hitler shocked the world by invading Poland. A war like the world had never seen before was coming to Europe, and Britain was nowhere near ready to resist the rising Wehrmacht. Desperate for modern aircraft, the British requested warplanes from the US, whose dormant aircraft industry could only spare limited amounts. They were then sold several P-40 Warhawks, but they needed many more as the conflict escalated. After the Curtiss Corporation was unable to manufacture the numbers Britain required, they turned to James H. Kindleberger, the president of a recently formed aircraft manufacturer. He not only assured them that he could produce the P-40s they needed, but that he could do better and come up with a far superior warplane in just 120 days. The result would come to be known as the most aerodynamically flawless pursuit plane in existence, a fast, agile, and reliable aircraft that would shift the balance of the war. Still, the P-51 Mustang was revealed to have a fatal flaw that almost ended its career in combat, but destiny had other plans. A salesman's proposal. As World War II erupted, Britain realized that its Air Force didn't have the required assets to confront the recently modernized Luftwaffe. It then turned to an ally across the Atlantic for spare warplanes to bolster their Royal Air Force. The US was trying to keep its neutrality in the European conflict without completely forsaking its ally. Moreover, the US aviation industry was working under a peacetime demand, and it didn't have the massive number of spare aircraft that Britain needed. However, the US ultimately decided to sell several P-40 Warhawks to Britain, of which it had the most available units. The P-40s proved to be easily adapted to European war aviation standards, and Britain was more than satisfied with the acquisition. Still, the conflict was quickly growing out of control by 1940, and Britain required even more P-40s to meet the increasing demand. British officials reached Curtiss, the Warhawks manufacturer, to strike a deal to develop several hundred additional units. Unfortunately, negotiations collapsed after Curtiss admitted not having the manufacturing capabilities to produce the required warplanes in the time window British representatives required. The British then turned to North American Aviation Corporation, a relatively new player in the aircraft development game, with only 5 years in the industry. The corporation had previously worked with the British government in the development of modern training planes, and they'd been a monumental success. Thus, Britain was confident the young company could help them with their production problem. North American Aviation agreed to manufacture the P-40 warplanes, and the supply resumed. However, North American Aviation was not satisfied with making a competitor's aircraft. That's when James H. Kindleberger, the company's president, approached the British authorities with a daring proposal. Ever the ambitious salesman, Kindleberger convinced the British that his company could develop a faster, higher-flying, more agile warplane, which would have a more extended range and cost a fraction of the P-40. He even ensured the British government that he could have a prototype ready in no more than 120 days. The British were swayed by Kindleberger's conviction and previous experience with the company, and finally accepted the audacious deal. The Allison Mustang. The plan was set, and work began immediately. The new aircraft would use the same Allison 1250 horsepower, 12-cylinder liquid-cooled engine as the P-40 Warhawk, but with a completely new and groundbreaking airframe. By December of 1940, the prototype of the new NA-73X was ready for testing, a full 3 days before the 120-day deadline ended. The novel aircraft supplemented the capable Allison engine with a masterfully designed aluminum alloy fuselage that featured a unique laminar flow wing design. The breakthrough wing configuration sent the thickest part of the wing further back to reduce friction, cutting drag while increasing speed and range. However, the innovation came at a cost, as the laminar flow wings would perform poorly as the aircraft ascended to higher altitudes. It also lost maneuverability at lower speeds. The prototype became an instant success. Vance Breeze, the aviation engineer and test pilot who flew the aircraft for the first time, reached 322 miles per hour while cruising at 15,000 feet during the first test. Kindleberger had kept his promise. The prototype was delivered on time, and the plane was 25 miles faster than the P-40 and drastically more agile. The British were thrilled, and they called North American Aviation to tell them they had chosen a name for the new aircraft: the Mustang. Apaches and invaders. The U.S. Army Air Corps decided to keep 2 Mustangs for evaluation purposes, which would take the official designation of P-51. However, in contrast to their British counterparts, American authorities were not thrilled with the new aircraft's performance. The Americans identified that the warplane had formidable potential, but they concluded that the Allison engine detracted from what a next-generation fighter needed to be. Its high-altitude performance turned sluggish and unstable above 17,000 feet due to the lack of a supercharger. The U.S. Army Air Corps thus decided that the Mustang would not make a good fighter against its Luftwaffe counterparts and relegated it to other roles. On April 16, 1942, the U.S. ordered 500 Mustangs for dive bombing and renamed the aircraft A-36 Apache, or A-36 Invader. U.S. pilots disregarded the name and continued to call it the Mustang. The Apaches and Invaders became the first U.S. Mustangs to serve in the war. Finding its place. The brutal reality of combat revealed a fatal flaw in the Mustang's design that testing could not identify. As the aircraft was employed for dive bombing, they became highly vulnerable as they broke their dive, lost speed, and became sitting ducks. For other aircraft, this might not be such a perilous situation, but the Mustang's cooling system had a crucial weakness. A single bullet to the radiator was enough to destroy the aircraft, and the moment the airplane broke its dive, it was left completely exposed to small arms fire. This shortcoming frustrated the U.S. Army Corps exceedingly. With few options left, the Mustang was demoted to particular low-altitude roles that didn't include dive bombing and served as airborne artillery, air support, and skip bomber aircraft. Despite its considerable flaws, the Allison Mustang was finally able to find its place. As U.S. troops entered Burma in 1943, they found themselves amid mountainous and cruel terrains with no roads or railroads to support them. Furthermore, with the floods and excessive mud brought by the wet season, not even aircraft could deliver the Americans much-needed support. With its forward air control direction and formidable firepower, only the Mustang was able to enter the treacherous Burma skies and clear enemy posts ahead of U.S. troop advances. Army brass evaluations aside, the Allison Mustangs were loved by pilots who considered them responsive, reliable, and easy to fly, as long as they avoided high altitude. It was then that someone finally suggested that the Mustang, with its remarkable features, should be given a better engine. The Merlin Mustang. The British, who had also learned to love the Allison Mustang despite its flaws, quickly suggested fitting it with a Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, the same powerhouse inside the mighty Spitfire. The idea took off, and after some negotiation, Packard, the American automotive engine manufacturer, agreed to modify such an engine to be mounted on the Mustangs. The result was a 1,300 horsepower engine, enhanced by a formidable supercharger. The Merlin was also a 12-cylinder engine, but it had a much stronger power-to-weight ratio, fuel efficiency, and the addition of a capable supercharger. Subsequently, North American Aviation began the swift modifications to accommodate the new engine. These changes further improved the magnificent aircraft. 4 propeller blades were used instead of 3, which improved high-altitude performance, and the fuselage was heavily reinforced, while crucial adjustments were made to the radiator to make it less vulnerable to enemy fire. Furthermore, the 30mm caliber guns of the Allison model were replaced with 50 caliber Browning machine guns. The new engine, refined fuselage, and additional firepower suddenly turned the Mustang from a warplane struggling to find a place in the war into the ultimate World War II fighter. Changing the tide. As the new model, designated P-51B, came out from development in November of 1942, it could fly 30 miles faster than its predecessor at a staggering 30,000-foot altitude, outperforming anything in the sky at the time. Soon, pilots realized that the Mustang had another powerful feature up its sleeve: its 425-gallon tank and an engine that consumed half the fuel than other aircraft gave them an unprecedented range of over 1,080 miles, and with additional tanks mounted on the wings, they could go as far as 2,600 miles. All of its impressive new features allowed the Mustang to escort the B-17 bombers across Europe in long and dangerous journeys which had lost countless bombers before the Merlin Mustang could protect them. The U.S. Army Air Corps was so impressed, they immediately ordered 2,200 P-51B warplanes, and by 1943, the new Mustang began pouring into the battlefront in massive numbers. The aircraft changed the fate of the war. Not only did bombers stop being obliterated by the Luftwaffe thanks to the Mustang's dogfighting prowess and fantastic range, but after a bombing raid, the Mustangs were able to conduct ground attack tasks and destroy smaller German assets by themselves. With the help of the Merlin-powered Mustangs, Germany's fuel and aircraft industries took an overwhelming blow from which they could never recover. A lack of fuel and aircraft parts led the Luftwaffe to struggle to put warplanes in the sky, giving the Allies air superiority over Europe. The bomber pilots felt a new sense of safety and developed a deep appreciation for the Mustangs, calling them little friends as a sign of endearment. As 1943 was coming to an end, Mustang production skyrocketed, arriving at every front and flown by almost every Allied power. Type D. The ultimate fighter plane could still be improved, as RAF pilots had two significant criticisms. The canopy made it impossible for the pilot to look backward, and the guns tended to jam after certain high-risk maneuvers. North American aviation took note and swiftly began work on an improved version of the mighty fighter. The result was the P-51 Type D, with a teardrop canopy that allowed a 360-degree view and yet another drastic increase of firepower. The canopy modification caused some stability issues to be resolved by a dorsal fin on the tail to add additional control, while the wings were redesigned to fit 3 50-caliber Browning machine guns each, bringing the total to 6 and eliminating the jamming issue. The Mustang D soon became the typical Mustang to be found across all fronts, as North American aviation was tasked with producing over 8,000 such models in 1944 alone. No other piston-powered aircraft could ever dream of coming close to the Mustang's agility, range, and firepower when they engaged in dogfights. And on March 4th, 1944, the Mustang D made the 1,100-mile run to Berlin for the first time, escorting a colossal bombing fleet and marking the final stage of the Third Reich's reign of terror. Unstoppable warplanes. The Mustangs flew over 213,000 missions during the war, claiming 5,000 German warplanes and destroying 4,000 on the ground, half the total of all American units after their debut. In contrast, only 2,500 Mustangs were lost due to combat, malfunctions, or pilot error, making it one of the most successful warplanes of the war. As their empire crumbled around them, and no German warplane seemed capable of confronting the Mustangs, the Germans hoped their newly developed jet and rocket-powered fighters could finally gain air superiority. Even though the jets were 100 miles per hour faster than the Mustangs, the American warplanes could still outlast and outmaneuver the jets. Moreover, the depleted German industry could only produce a few units of such technologically advanced wonder weapons, which were not enough to cripple the now ubiquitous Mustangs flying over Berlin. The numerous Mustangs ambushed the jets in takeoff and landing, and used their numbers to bring them down during dogfights, with the depleted Luftwaffe not being able to stand against the might of America's most capable fighter. Even Hermann Göring is said to have claimed that, quote, "The day I saw Mustangs over Berlin, I knew the jig was up." Thank you for watching our video. What do you think is the most important contribution the P-51 made to the war effort? Let us know in the comments section below. And if you want to find more history-inspired content, check out our other Dark Documentaries channels. Stay tuned.